Hi guys, we are going to move on in our unit from 3.5 and we're going, or I'm sorry, 6.3, and we are going to move on to a unit of 6.4, which is talking about real world problems using percents. So, excuse me. Unfortunately, you still have to deal with my scratchy voice on your video, but hopefully you could be patient enough to understand what we're doing. So, we are solving problems involving percents, and we've got some vocabulary here that we need to make sure we remember. So as we go through the chapter, please make sure that you take note of the yellow boxes throughout the chapter, since you're going to need to write down the definitions of these to get credit on your notes. So let's go ahead and start. And we are essentially going to take all the units that we've done that are 6 point something units, and we're combining them because we're using a little bit of all of the things that we've learned to solve our real world problems. So what we're going to do is we're going to do problem solving involving percents that we have to apply all of the other stuff that we learned. So let's go ahead and try to do that. We'll start out first with, in her basketball game on page 198, Julia scored 18 of her team's 48 points. Hopefully you have your book out and you're walking through this with me on page 198. If not, please pause the video and get it. And it's talking about what percent of Julie's team's points did Julie score. And so method 1 is the fraction of the team's points Julie scored. So what we're going to do is we're going to put Julie's points on top. The team's points, remember we put 100% on the bottom. The team's points would be 100% of what the whole game scored. And then we'll put the percentage of that Julie scored on top. So essentially, these are the real numbers for 100%. I'm going to go ahead and zoom this in a little bit. The real number for 100% is 48. The real number for Julie's points is 18%, and they want us to find what percent her real number of 18 is. So essentially what we do is we just put them in a fraction like we did for all of our other units. We put them in a fraction, the 100% on the bottom, the real number for that, and the real number for Julie's points, and then we just reduce it. Pretty simple. Then what we're going to do is it wants us to turn it into a fraction by finding, if you need to find 100%, 3/8 times 100%. And remember back a couple units ago we did this, where you times it by 100%, which essentially, remember we talked about 100% of a pi is the whole pi, which essentially is equal to 1, which really is equal to 100 over 1, because any number over itself is that number. So what they did is to times by 100%, they just times 3/8 over 100%, which is 100 over 1, and they found it was 300 over 8. Which is what your page says right here. And then whenever we have an improper fraction, we need to turn it into a mixed number to finalize our answer. So if you go 8 goes into 337 times with a remainder of 1, or I'm sorry, it's going to be a remainder of 4, and then it would be 37 and 4/8, and when they reduce that down, it equaled 37 and 1/2. Because you can reduce this to 1/2. So hopefully you're understanding the total of Julie's score was 37.5% of her team's points. So we kind of combined our 6.1, our 6.2, and our 6.3 to do our real world problems for 6.4. So there is one other method that you can use. We just did method 1. Method 2 is if the total score was 48 points, which we talked about up here is the 100%. So 100% of the team's points was 48. So the real number for 100% is 48. Then just like we found in our last unit 6.3, or our last chapter, what they did is they said, okay, so 1 point would be, over here it shows us our base number, which is 100%, and it says 48 points is the real number for that 100%. They want us to figure out what is the percent for the real number of 18 points. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take, here's their 48 points, which equals 100%. So 1 point would be 48 over 100. We would divide that. That would be how much the fraction it would be for 1 point. But they want us to find 18 points. How much for 18 points? What percentage that would be. And so we need to take the 18 points and times it by that fraction of 1 point, and that would equal 37.5. If I had 18, and I'll just do the math for you, 18 times 100 over 48, and remember any number that we have over itself is the same, is just that in a fraction form. So we would go 18 over 100, or 18 times 100 is 1800, and 48 times 1 is 48. So if we went ahead and divided 48 into 1800 or 1800, it would come out to 37, and then it would be with a remainder of 4. And when we reduce it down, it would go to 1/2, just like this. So hopefully that makes sense. You can choose whichever method, method 1 or method 2, that works best for you. And if you don't remember them very well, please refer back to page 198 to say, okay, how do I do this again? I enjoyed method 1 more. Let me break it down and just substitute the numbers for whatever problem you're having a issue with. Or you can say method 2 made more sense to me. I'll go ahead and use that and just plug the numbers for whatever problem you're having a trouble with into that. So let's do one more just to help you guys do this, and I'd like you to get a piece of paper out and do this with me, or do it in your composition book. What percent of her team's points did the rest of Julie's team score? Well, all we have to do is take 100%, and we take the amount, sorry, I gotta push my speaker up here, I'm off the grid here. So what percent of her team's points did the rest of Julie's team score? Well, that's really easy to figure out. We just take 100%. We take away Julie's fractional percent, which is 37.5, which leaves us with 62.5. So that would be what the rest of Julie's team scored. As long as both of those equal 100, then that would be what they scored. So let's go over to our next page and try some of these guided practice problems on page 199. So please get your composition book out, and we'll do the first one together and have you do the rest on your own. So number 1, Mr. Jefferson is making 80 cups of fruit punch for the grand opening of his bakery. He used 52 cups of fruit juice, and the rest is sparkling water. What percentage is our question? What percentage of the fruit or of the punch is fruit juice? So it gives you both methods here, so you can figure out which one works best for you. So method 1, fraction of fruit juice in punch, and please do this with me on your paper. Fraction of fruit juice in punch. So we go up here, and remember on the very bottom we write whatever is the real number for 100%. He's making 80 cups of fruit punch. That's 100%. So we put 80 on the bottom of our fraction. He uses 52 cups of fruit juice and the rest sparkling water. So he has 52 fruit juice. What percent of the punch is fruit juice? So right here we would just write this fraction. So write that down on your paper. 80 over 52. Then the percent of fruit juice in punch would be just like we had over here. Sorry, I'm gonna keep moving my paper here so you can see. So just remember method 1 over here, just like Julie's points, we just put it in a fraction form, the real number for 100% on the bottom, and then we're just reducing. So let's look at our problem over here and figure out how could I reduce that. So 52 over 80, they're both even numbers, so I could divide by 2. Sorry, I'm getting off my screen here. I could divide by 2, which would be 40, and then 52 would be 26, And so then I can still divide by 2, but whatever I do to the bottom I have to do to the top, remember. So it would be 20 if I'm dividing by 2 again, and 26 would be 13. I can't reduce that anymore because 13 cannot be reduced, so it would be 13 over 20 would be my answer. So hopefully that makes sense if you enjoyed method 1 last time. And if you enjoyed method 2, let's talk about that. Method 2 was right over here. And so I'm going to push my book over a little bit. So method 2, how many cups equals 100%? Well, up here if we look at it, it says 80 cups equals 100%. And so we put 80, and then it says 100, and we're actually putting the percent over that because it's talking about 52%. So if we have 80 cups equals 100, then just like we did on our method over here, we need to put 100% over our 80, and that would equal, just like we did on our method 2, we would say, okay, well that will only get us how much 1 cup is. So we need to actually times that by how many cups did it ask? 52. So I would go 52 times 100 over 80. So I need to put my 52 into a fraction by putting it over 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and multiply across. This would be 5200. This would be 80. And then I'm going to put that in a mixed number. So 80 goes into 500 or 5,200. And hold on, let me grab my calculator here. It would be 65 even. So your answer would be 65. And then it's asking what percent of the punch is sparkling water. So I just figured out how much is the percentage of the punch is fruit juice, so the rest would be sparkling water. So remember my 65%. If I take my 100% and take away 65, that is going to equal my sparkling water. So 65 would equal 35% sparkling water if I took 65 away from 100. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I want to point out down here on our vocabulary word, Stephen and his family had dinner in a restaurant. The total cost of the food was $68.50 and an 8% sales tax. Sales tax, I think we're all pretty familiar with that, but it's just what is added to the bill for the state amount. So you can just define that however you want, what is added to the bill for the tax that the state or the government wants to take. And then let's go ahead and have you guys do this one on your own. Please do these practice parts, walk through them. And then if you would turn the next page onto page 200, I'm going to zoom back a little bit and go ahead and do guided practice problem 2. And hopefully if you have any questions, you can look at this little blue box here and see how they did it. And then also if you go over and do practice problem 3 and 4, and if you have any questions, you can look straight in this box here, and we will talk about those tomorrow. And please make sure that you look at your vocabulary words that are in the yellow here, and we'll go ahead and also do these vocabulary words, interest and interest rate right here. It tells you the vocabulary word here, so make sure you write that in your notes and then do practice problem 5 and 6. So we're going to do guided practice problems starting with number 1, go all the way to 6. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.